So I'm delighted to have this partner panel with me to my left, Krishna Gade, who is it Gade or Gade? I'm so sorry. Yeah, Gade or Gade, who's the founder and CEO of Fiddler.ai, one of the hottest companies out there today. Welcome, Krishna. I've got Sriraj Rajaram, who's principal product manager at Reltio, the unified data management, master data management platform. Welcome, Sriraj. And I've got John McKim from Dell Technologies, who's an AI infrastructure engineer and data scientist as well. Welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start by moving down. Krishna, tell us a little bit about Fiddler. Everybody, I think, have heard of Fiddler in terms of AI observability. Why don't you give us a brief description of what you guys do?
Awesome. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Yeah. So Fiddler is an enterprise AI observability startup. We focus on building trust and transparency in AI. So think about us as cousin of Acceldata, but for AI models and generative AI apps. So we sit in the AI workflow where we consume the inference log, the model inputs, the model outputs. So for example, your generative AI application prompts responses, and we then try to monitor for hallucinations, jailbreaking attacks, PII exposure, or just drift in model accuracy, so that AI teams can develop transparency and trust in AI and deploy a better form of AI to their users. So there are various implications of why this is needed. Of course, there's the whole operational need of AI being a black box and non-deterministic, and as a humans, we want to be able to understand how it works, and then of course there's the compliance need of you don't want to put something in production that's going to potentially put your company, especially a large enterprise, under some sort of a reputation risk or a regulatory risk. And that's kind of where Fiddler comes in providing that visibility layer.
Fantastic. And Sriraj, so Reltio has been around for many years. I used to work there, as you might know, but tell us a little bit about what's the latest and the greatest at Reltio.
First of all, we miss you. But that being said, yes, Reltio is the industry-leading platform in data unification and deduplication, creating that golden view of your customer, supplier, or product. But more extensively, we've also moved into the areas of creating the 360-degree view of either your product or your customer. So now you can not just view now you can not only be sure about the identity of your customer or supplier, but also how they interact. Which phone calls they've made, which emails they've interacted with, which marketing interactions they've done, so on and so forth. So that's our forte specifically.
And John, thank you so much, Sriraj. John, so Dell does many, many things, but one of the principal things is the hardware and the infrastructure that Dell supplies, and increasingly popular in the age of AI and data centers. So tell us a little bit about how Dell is sort of riding this AI wave.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Dell, we are an infrastructure provider, of course, but we also provide those end-to-end solutions for our customers. My role specifically, I've come from a data science background, worked on, analytics projects for companies down in Los Angeles. I'm kind of turned into the AI infrastructure engineer, mostly out of a need in the market, because we're seeing that customers kind of need this bridge from traditional infrastructure to understanding what the data science teams are doing with their workloads. So that's kind of where my team comes in. We kind of help bridge that gap and kind of relate the products that we have to the actual workload and kind of help them optimize.
Terrific. So we have a really sort of perfect eclectic gathering of sort of AI observability, master data management, unified data management, and the infrastructure. So let's start with Sriraj. So MDM's been around for a while. It's evolved. Reltio was the first to move to the cloud. Incredible success there. How have you seen AI and agentic AI change the landscape as far as MDM is concerned?
Sure. First of all, I'll begin by saying that until about a month or so ago, I was a skeptic, right? But now I'm a believer. I have seen it in action. I have seen agentic AI deployed on our installations, and it's actually making a huge difference. I'll give you a simple example. You go into a pharmaceutical company. I think we had Pfizer on earlier, but I was talking to another pharmaceutical company earlier. Their data stewards are inundated with workflow queues. So there's millions of workflow queues that they have to sort out through manually. Now, obviously, it's a highly regulated industry, and they can't just use AI blindly. But if you look at their data, they have non-medical professionals and medical professionals. And obviously, while medical professionals, they have to sort it out with some human intervention. The non-medical professionals, agentic AI capabilities have actually made a huge difference, reducing queues of data steward queues in about 100,000 down to single digits or double digits. Just giving recommendations. It's able to go to LinkedIn, make sure that this person's address change is valid, so on and so forth. So the identity is valid. So I'm actually seeing significant improvement with that. When I saw it, I became a total believer. That's just one example, and that's a huge impact for master data users.
And that's a combination of Reltio's products such as RIA and Fern.
Absolutely.
And I believe congratulations, you recently announced an MCP server.
Yes, the MCP server has made a big difference in that, yeah.
Terrific. So Krishna, tell me a little bit about sort of what Fiddler does. You mentioned, at a high level, but certainly I think hallucinations are just like the bad word right now, right? Everybody knows what they are. LLMs making things up. How does exactly Fiddler capture and monitor those scenarios? Do you look at model drift? What do you do?
Yeah, so the problem with AI is twofold, right? One is you all probably played with ChatGPT and you found like this non-determinism, and it exists. You send the same prompt twice, you're not guaranteed to get the same response. And second aspect of it is you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, the magic behind the scenes, where it might fail, why it might succeed, right? So especially when it comes to hallucinations, when you are getting an AI response, let's say you're building a RAG application or an enterprise AI chatbot or an agent, and it's informing you with, say, you're asking a customer support related question, it comes back with some policy related answer. You do not really know whether the answer is actually accurate, reflecting the company's policy or not, right? Unless you put a human who a subject matter expert can review it. But if you want to deploy AI applications at scale, you cannot really employ humans to review every single output. And it's just not scalable. So that's where observability of AI, the technology that we have developed to detect these hallucinations comes about. So the way it works is, essentially, there's this concept called using a language model as a judge that has emerged. And you probably have all heard of this term called LLM-as-a-judge. So what you're using is, can we use another language model to detect if there are fallacies in the responses? Now, there are many ways to do it. One way to do it is you ask the same question to another language model and see if the response is actually consistent with what you got. But then the problem comes down to, is the other language model also saying the right thing? There's also those challenges. Another approach that we take is, can we actually tune the language model such that it behaves like a classifier? So it can say that, okay, I'm not going to give you a generational content, but given two pieces of content, I can tell you if these two things are related. So for example, let's say for that customer support chatbot, I want to know if the response that came to me is actually grounded in the policy documentation data. So a judge model in this case, what it can do is, it can take these two pieces of content and come up with a score. We call it like a groundedness score or a faithfulness score that reflects how likely is this response extracted from the policy content. Now, with that, what you can start introducing is like metrics into measuring LLM quality, right? So now you can think about relevancy metric, conciseness, completeness, faithfulness. So you can then quantify the quality of LLM responses in a manner that you can quantify, general observability related systems, right? So that's kind of how, we do it. So we use this, LLM-as-a-judge. We have created our own technology called Fiddler Trust models. These are homegrown small language models that do these things for specified tasks. And then we continuously improve them on, both customer data sets as well as, we keep benchmarking them on public data sets.
That's terrific. I think, it's going to be a game changer. Everybody wants to use AI and agentic AI, but the trust in hallucinations, that's something that people really want to get their hands around. And so Fiddler's playing a critical role. So John, lots been talked about sort of in terms of the governance and trust related to software that's acting upon the data, but infrastructure can also play a role, right? So underpowered GPUs, or some people are trying to use CPUs now, right? And in more commoditized hardware with smaller models like DeepSeek. How does Dell think about that in terms of the role of the trusted data that the hardware vendors, infrastructure vendors like Dell participate in?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, when you think about trust, you usually think about the model accuracy, right? The results, and that's obviously super, super important. But from an end user perspective, if they're using a model and there's lag, latency, they don't know if it's software related, hardware related. All they know is that they're not getting the answers they want in the time that they need, right? So they lose a little credibility. So, Dell's approach is, we want to have that layer of trust and being able to kind of trace, have observability on your infrastructure. If you abstract away your hardware, you're not always going to be able to see where the latency is happening, if that's through API bottlenecks or network latency or context windows, things like that. But by having your own hardware to kind of view it and have that traceability, you can have that ownership and build out the systems, understand where the bottlenecks are, tune your hardware to your workload, and ultimately gain that credibility back into the end user.
Terrific, thank you. So, Sriraj, coming back to sort of Reltio and unified data management, you mentioned the sort of rapid improvement in data stewarding and the efficiencies realized there. But overall, have you seen an evolution in how unified data and data governance has been approached now that you have more agentic capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take the data governance side of it. With agentic AI capabilities, we can actually start thinking about agents that can escalate if a particular field is missing values or if the field has incorrect values, right? So that's something that can deliver rapid improvements in terms of data governance. In terms of matching, we've already seen this. We have something called FERN, Flexible Entity Resolution Network, which is our AI-based matching mechanism. We're able to bring contextual awareness to the matching engine. For example, in a banking scenario, in a retail scenario, I can match Ramon Shen and Ramon Shen. You may be just two different, individuals, two different interactions. But in a banking scenario, you may have your own account and you may be a beneficiary on somebody else's account. I cannot necessarily match that. There are regulations that preventing that because I cannot expose your social security number on the beneficiary side of it. So this is where Fern has that contextual awareness that this is a banking scenario. I can match, but I can't merge. So that's a capability of data governance and matching that's coming about. Further, also with Fern and such AI agents, we're able to bring about language awareness. For example, Western names are pretty simple, Bob and Bob. But when you go into ethnic names, then the match becomes complicated. Is a slight character at the end, is that actually a spelling mistake or is that a gender differentiation, right? So that's where Fern is able to bring even language and cultural awareness to data unification capabilities.
Yeah, that's amazing. That I think the internationalization and the language translation on matching has always been a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And the fact that Fern can address that is amazing. I think Krishna described AI observability and data observability as cousins. I think more of Reltio with master data management data observabilities are more like brothers because we have several joint customers here in the audience. And the data quality and the data observability that feeds MDM also benefits the data stewards, right? Because you're going to get more automated matches and merges if the quality of the data is better. Krishna, coming back to sort of AI observability, what do you see as sort of the next big thing? Fiddler is obviously hot and in demand right now because of all the large language models that are being deployed. But looking forward, what are you thinking is the next frontier?
Yeah, so we started the company in the pre-generative AI era. So our first focus on classical machine learning models, deep learning models, which is still a large part of enterprises are still relying on those things for your day-to-day business processes, right? Now, in the last couple of years, of course, there's a lot of hype and of course interest in generative AI. A lot of people are working on building. Started with RAG applications, now moving into AI agents. So the way we see it is, essentially, AI is becoming a first-class software citizen, right? Essentially in the enterprise stack. With AI agents, what you're seeing is this, evolution of like AI directly doing tasks versus, in the machine learning world, it was probably more in a silo. It's providing, intelligence to like software applications. Now, what we are seeing is software itself being rewritten and refactored with AI as the backbone, whether it's just new CRM systems, new customer support systems, business process workflows. We are working with customers that are transforming claims processing, even credit risk report generation, KYC, some of our financial services customers through agentic workflows. So then the problem with agentic workflows and as AI becomes more front and center is the failure scenarios are even more amplified, right? So, for example, with agents, you have this problem of they might be forgetful. Downstream, like a task, another agent could lose the context, or they call it memory loss, and it could call a wrong API or a wrong tool and perform the task in an incorrect manner. So now you get into this classical observability of monitoring the workflow, instrumenting the workflow, identifying where those scenarios fail. So that's the big opportunity that we are seeing, and it seems like right now, as for agentic workflows to scale, you really need that visibility, and enterprises need to invest in debugging, traceability, and being able to understand what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's very eye-opening. I think that Fiddler is certainly just leading the way in terms of these advanced capabilities. So kudos to you. So John, on the side of Dell, are you seeing more and more companies revisiting on-premise environments given the escalating cloud costs, right? There's definitely savings to be had under the circumstances where you're moving workloads to the cloud, but then there's the consumption costs, and model training has been often described as something that doesn't necessarily need to be in the cloud. So is Dell benefiting from sort of also the shift to Dell hardware in both on-prem and cloud and hybrid environments?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, the costs obviously associated with cloud computing can be unpredictable, right? To say the least. So, Dell's kind of approach is, we kind of see things moving towards it being kind of a highly specialized, kind of heterogeneous infrastructure moving forward. So that means, having the right tools to do the right tasks, and just the amount of, obviously on the software side, the amount of innovation happening, but on the hardware side as well, with, silicon diversity, different GPUs coming to market, networking, switches, storage, all those things are innovating so rapidly. So with that comes, like a lot of surface area opportunity for like optimization. Right. So kind of like think about it like building an airport, right? There's a lot of different logistical things happening, a lot of different types of vehicles, tools. You're not going to use the 747 to move baggage across the terminal, right? So that's kind of the approach we take with designing these work systems. You need your GPUs, of course, but there's all these other elements within the hardware that can be optimized, and like I said, offload to CPUs for smaller tasks, things like that. So helping, customers understand all the options available on that hardware side and give them, control and, the power to do that is kind of what we're seeing.
Excellent. Well, since you brought up costs, or actually I think I did, let's go back and talk a little bit, Sriraj, about the value, right, that unified data delivers. So you talked a little bit about Customer 360. How do your customers measure the value of the capabilities that Reltio provides?
Absolutely. So traditionally, our value has been in providing unified profiles. So making sure you address the correct customer correctly, whether it's in sales, service, or marketing. If you know your customer better, then you can serve them better. But more and more, we've drifted. I mean, we still continue to serve that, but we've continued to expand into this area of 360, where it's not just understanding who your customers are, but also how they related to one another, what we call as the intelligent data graph, right? So how they related to one another, how they interact with you, how many service calls they've made, what is their net promoter score, what's their lifetime value, and householding, right? So now, if you have this full view of this customer, so for example, if you take an insurance case, your a customer, Lisa, comes and asks for a quote on the website. So you've understood who Lisa is and you're able to serve the quote. But if you understand that Lisa's husband, John, already is a policyholder, now you're able to target her as a household and you're able to give value-added discounts because there's a joint household policy that you can serve, something that will make you more competitive. So that's the value add that Reltio brings about. And a lot of this is inherently built into the platform. So, the capability to household, the capability to match, the capability to construct this intelligent data graph of various relationships is already built into the platform.
Got it. And then Krishna, so since AI observability is new, how do your customers think about value? Obviously, it's a must-have insurance policy to prevent hallucinations or catch them before they occur. So you're talking about proactive, preventative detection. But how else are they thinking about you in terms of how to sort of quantify the value?
Yeah. I mean, there are two value props. One is, of course, there is this whole FOMO effect in the enterprise. They want to have like a chat GPT like experience for their internal users, for their external customers, right? So they pretty much every large company across sectors, there's a pressure that they're receiving from the CEO and the board to get started on AI. So what Fiddler helps there is to do this the right way, right? So what we call it, there's a FOMO effect on one hand, and there's also FOMO, what we call fear of messing up. Yeah, what if my AI application goes wrong? What if it basically hallucinates on in front of our users or business customers? Then they will lose confidence, right? So Fiddler helps our customers to deploy AI with confidence. So that's kind of the whole ROI aspect of it. You're investing millions of dollars in foundation models. Observability helps you with the last mile so that you're actually deploying the right form of AI. And then the second aspect of it is what you talked about, the risk aspect of it. If you don't have this, then things can go wrong. Maybe there would be like a sort of a PII exposure that someone jailbreaks into your chatbot and extract out sensitive information. Maybe there would be hallucinating chatbot that hurts customer trust, like what happened with Air Canada. So there are those risk issues. So it's basically a balancing on both sides. These days a lot of customers are kind of getting aware of the best practices. It's just like any other software, right? So when we actually develop new applications, we go through the SDLC process. We do test-driven development. We have CI/CD pipelines. We monitor our new applications, and we have this whole workflow we built. And it's the same thing that's happening with AI, and we are helping on the observability evaluation and providing the guardrails.
FOMO, it's going to be a trending hashtag. I like it. Well, just to wrap up here, I mean, Acceldata is tremendously gratified that you chose to sponsor and participate in our first ever Autonomous 25 event. Reltio and Fiddler have booths upstairs. I would strongly encourage you to take a look at the incredible products that they have to offer. Together, alone, we're all good, but together we're better. Really appreciate the partnership with all of you. And John, thank you so much for coming as well at Dell. Thank you, everybody, for listening.